In Conversation with Terry Shepard, award-winning broadcaster, narrator, and author. A deep dive into the writer's craft with the artists and support systems who create the stories we love.
Today's conversation takes us to a place that looks serene on the surface, but like so many small towns, holds tensions just beneath the calm. Our guest is Julie Snider, a Northern California writer whose debut novel, Chapel Bay Secrets, is out now. Julie's path to fiction is a winding and fascinating one. From growing up in Columbus, Ohio, to earning a music degree at Ohio State, performing with orchestras, and later pursuing a master's degree in natural resources. After decades as a public school teacher, crafting thousands of lesson plans and shaping young minds, Julie returned to the creative impulse that first took hold when she saw her words in print as a seventh-grade newspaper editor. That return has produced a novel that feels both intimate and urgently of our time. Chapel Bay Secrets centers around Brenda, a Japanese-American librarian who has always felt safe in her coastal California town until a threatened book ban, lingering grief, unresolved identity, and unexpected connections begin to unravel that sense of security. As the story unfolds, themes of bigotry, censorship, LGBTQ+ identity, historical memory, and the deep human need for community collide, asking whether love can truly heal the wounds we inherit and the ones we inflict. Julie Snider, it's great to have you in the conversation. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Terry. It's great to be here.
When did you first realize that this story was one you needed to tell?
The part of the story that is centered around the Japanese internment struck a very deep chord in me over 20 years ago when I was on a vacation going up through Northern California and happened upon the historical site where the Tule Lake internment camp was located. My traveling companion and I took a little tour through the barracks that were there that were very cramped looking, very dirty, very cold. Read the stories of the people that were forced from their homes into these camps in the 1950s during World War II. And it was just a wake-up call for me. I wondered why I had not been taught about this in school history classes. I didn't understand how this could have happened and not been made such a big deal about, at least in my life. So that was a thing that happened, as I said, over 20 years ago. In the more recent past, my wife, who at one point bought and sold items from storage facilities, came upon a trunk filled with Buddhist texts that were all in Japanese. And we consulted with a friend of ours whose mother had been in the Japanese camps. And she said, yes, that definitely is something that survives that time. It's something from that time period. We tried to get them translated, but we weren't able to do that. But that was sort of the second stop on my journey of thinking about this time in our past. And then fast forward to my retirement as a teacher, which was in 2021. I wanted to scratch the itch of writing a novel that had been with me for some time. And I bought a book called Write a Novel in 90 Days, which is hilarious, right? The 90-day novel. But I just pulled out what I wrote in the very first assignment. And I wrote, my novel is about three people whose lives intersect in a way that surprises and challenges them. Each has unresolved issues from the past, which revolve around the central desire to fit in, to release old demons, to go beyond negative self-perceptions. What I want to express through the story are central truths about interconnection, how it is possible to let go of the isolating ideas we hold and realize ways in which our strengths can both support and be supported by connecting with others. So I think that was just a deep truth that had been resonating with me for a long time. And the other themes in the book sort of stemmed from that desire.
You spent some time as a musician. What was your instrument?
Violin. Yeah, played in a couple of orchestras, taught oodles of students, had a really good time with that, but eventually came to the conclusion that I was setting myself up for a very rough life if that's how I thought I was going to make my entire living. So I did make a shift in my 20s.
You have led an eclectic life. How did all these experiences coalesce to shape the way you tell stories?
I would say that my desire to connect people comes from all of the paths I've taken. As storytelling, I think, is a way of bridging gaps between people. And so thinking back to when I was a musician in orchestras, it was an astonishing thing when I could sit down with over 100 other people on a stage, all of whom came from very different backgrounds, and produce something as beautiful as a symphony together. Because everybody was setting aside their own identity, if you will, and coming together for a larger purpose. So that made quite an impression upon me. And then as I was in school studying this and that and the other, music and natural resources, I found that I needed to let my curiosity lead me. And that was another part of delving into the research for more storytelling. And then later as a public school teacher, I learned that students don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. That's a trite saying, but it's really true. So that further encouraged me to, again, dig into my own intentions and make sure that I'm always writing from a place that seems true to me.
Chapel Bay feels so vivid and lived in to me. What made you choose that setting?
Chapel Bay is an amalgam of several small towns along California's central coast. And these are places that my wife and I go when we just need to relax and unburden. And it was just a natural idea to have a small town set on a coast, and to have it be a tourist town as well was important. So this came to me rather quickly once I began to think where I wanted to set the story.
What do you think small towns reveal about the larger American experience?
Once upon a time, small town life was very, very different from life in big cities. Small towns could be somewhat isolated from world events, and people lived in a little bit of a bubble. And I think that bubble has burst. As soon as internet became how everybody connected, the news travels just as quickly to small towns as it does to big cities. So people have changed in the small towns. I think that people are people. And whether they live in a small town, out in the countryside, or in a large city, they have the same drives and emotions. But in a small town with limited opportunities to meet and greet people, it feels less like an accident when two people run into each other, and it feels like they can rub up against one another like sandpaper at times and reveal what's underneath the surfaces. The issues are all the same in small towns and big cities, but I think I set the novel in a small town partially so I could manufacture those encounters between people.
We're talking with Julie Snider about her debut novel, Chapel Bay Secrets. She's got a great website, Julie, S-N-I-D-E-R, author, juliesniderauthor.com. How did you build your protagonist?
Well, Brenda's an interesting character. Brenda Kato is a librarian. That was a natural because my family is full of people that love books, and I had, as you had mentioned, had been a teacher. So having somebody that's bookish was an easy one. She's troubled by grief over the loss of her mother. I myself lost my mother 15 years ago, so I could identify with that. She's searching for a father she's never known. That doesn't come from my experience, but it felt, here's Brenda, a mother that was in the internment camps and possibly had a child out of wedlock and then was too embarrassed or too ashamed to even talk about it. So this was another layer that came in that seemed like it made sense to me. Brenda's a runner and a musician, and those are things that I've also either am doing or have done in the past. So I baked in some of my own characteristics into Brenda. She's somebody that's loved and lost, and many of us have loved and lost. So I felt like people could identify with that. And she's a striver. She always was wanting to be perfect. She's thinking her perfectionism could shield her from the loneliness that she ultimately felt. So that's a big story theme too. I felt like those were things that I either experienced or that I see around me in the world.
One of the things that flesh out great stories are fascinating secondary characters that involve themselves in Brenda's life in unexpected ways. What role does chosen community play in her new journey?
Well, Brenda isolates herself in the beginning of the book, and that becomes evident from the first several pages. And she learns through her journey that she can't continue to do that. She has to start to learn to trust somebody at some point. And these two interesting characters keep crossing her path. One's a wealthy widow who has dreams of becoming a literary giant in her community. And the other is a retired psychologist who has a guilty secret that's really troubling him. So each of these characters has their own needs and desires. And here comes Brenda, and they have to combine their strengths to be able to find some kind of peace in their lives.
Book banning is a central catalyst to this story. As a former educator, How personal was it for you to write about censorship?
Very, very personal. Book banning is one of those topics that gets me very angry very quickly, and I'm not a person that's quick to anger. I really am not. But just the idea that you could deny access to students, deny access to the public, you tell somebody this topic is completely off limits, just sets me afire. And it's something that's been in the news a lot. And I was laughing the other day telling my wife, gosh, I thought that after this book was published, book banning wouldn't probably be a big topic anymore. And the joke's on me.
How do you balance social urgency with emotional storytelling?
A part of it is looking into my own heart and what matters to me. That's the urgency. And a lot of it is about just learning the craft of writing, looking for role models, doing a lot of reading, taking classes. I've had wonderful teachers that have allowed me to work with them, and just reading books by people like Ann Patchett, Elizabeth Strout, people that I admire greatly, doing my best to make my sentences as clean and clear and emotionally resonant as possible. A lot of practice.
We're talking with Julie Snider about her debut novel, Chapel Bay Secrets. At its core, this is also a story about grief and longing. How does loss shape Brenda's choices throughout the story?
Loss has made Brenda very, very cautious and exacerbates her feelings of isolation. But the story progresses and she meets certain people who've shared some of her losses and who maintain a sense of belonging. She begins to allow hope for a better emotional life to enter in. But as readers will find out, there are a lot of obstacles.
The book asks whether love can heal old wounds. Do you think it can?
I think it can, but only if there's forgiveness entered into the equation. I think that's the only way. But yes, I think it can.
Beyond the how to write a novel book that you read, what was your process to create Chapel Bay Secrets?
I'm a planner, so I wrote out some long-term plans, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, all the parts of a novel that are supposed to work together. Came up with ideas for scenes from there. So I did a top-down kind of a structure, but it was a hot mess after I got done with the first draft. And I hired a developmental editor who did a lot toward helping me understand how to connect the scenes with one another. She laughed the first time she read it and she said, I didn't think you were going to make it to the end, but you made it to the end. That was a backhanded compliment if I'd ever had one. So got a lot of suggestions from her and rewrote it several times, had other people read it, beta readers and so on, as many of us do. Had a great copy editor and a good friend that was a proofreader. It's like going through a sieve many, many times. But the essential thing, I think, for any of us who are writing is to be sure of our voice and maintain our integrity throughout all of these changes and revisions. So it's always something to keep in the front of the mind.
Writing process itself is often so internally revealing. Were there any surprises in writing the story that you didn't expect?
There were. My first draft, I thought, ended at a certain point, and as I went back, my characters started to speak to me, and I realized that wasn't the end, and that they had so much more to tell me. Which was good because it would have been too short, the first draft, that is. So I began to open myself to what they had to tell me and what they wanted and where they were going to go. It went from there. Yes, many surprises.
What do you like best about teaching?
My goodness. So many things. I love developing lessons for kids. I love the planning process of coming up with something that was going to reach students at their level and help them be as curious as I was about certain things. I was a science teacher in actual fact, and I think science is everything. So just sharing that curiosity and getting kids excited about that was wonderful. Seeing them grow over time.
How did writing fiction differ from your beautiful Substack essays and other published work?
I think that you have to take facts and weave them more fully with emotions and take the reader on even more of a journey with fiction. It's easier to write essays, right? You find your topic and you think of the structure and you go. So I can write a Substack essay in just a matter of hours if I want to. That's not true with fiction. Chapter after chapter has to build. And often what you've done in chapter 4 changes what you want to say in chapter 1. So there's a lot more back and forth with writing fiction, but it's quite a weave.
How much different is the finished product, besides length, from the original draft?
It makes much more sense than the original draft. I was just looking back through the notes that my editor gave me, and she'd say things like, "How did you get here?" I don't think that's what he would have said at that point. Think about your dialogue. So I think the dialogue is greatly improved. I think the connections between topics are greatly improved because I have many, many topics that are woven through this, as you've mentioned, LGBTQ rights, immigration, book banning, the Japanese American internment. It's a lot. And then the ordinary things that happen to people in the course of their lives that kind of make it feel real. I had to really make sure that it was like creating a layer cake. I had to really make sure that each layer built upon the previous one and then led to the next thing. So it made sense. It was an interesting challenge.
And you certainly rattled a lot of cages. Was there any discomfort in doing that?
Yes, and of course I'm feeling discomfort now that it's out in the world. But honestly, I feel like because I wrote from my own truth, that it will resonate with the people that are meant to find it. So I'm not quaking in my boots exactly.
How do you hope your readers will feel when they've read the final page of Chapel Bay Secrets?
That's a really good question. I hope that they feel a sense of hopefulness themselves, and I hope that they come away from the book feeling like they can connect with people unlike themselves, because that's always one of my goals, is to try to help people see that they're not as different from other people as they imagine that they may be. And I think a lot of the trouble in the world is really centered on people feeling like they're right and they're different from other people and they have to make their point and so on and so forth. So I hope that people feel that way. One of my early reviewers put it very nicely. She said, "Anyone reading this book will discover themselves in Brenda's journey. In truth, we are all others." And I thought that was a beautiful way of putting it. So I hope people feel that way.
The writing community, I've discovered, has been one of the joys of the experience of creation that I didn't expect. How has that experience been for you as you interact with other people who are writers?
Oh my gosh, it takes a village to write a book. And I'm feeling so supported by people, not just the editors and proofreaders, but also my local writing group. I'm on the board of directors of the California Writers Club Sacramento branch. And I don't think I ever would have felt confident to accept that position had I not already immersed myself in the community and really had that give and take with people. I learn from people every single time I go to a meeting. We bring up writing craft topics. We support one another in our book releases. It's absolutely essential to work within a community.
For listeners who may be feeling disconnected or unheard right now, what do you hope Chapel Bay Secrets will offer to them?
I hope that after they've turned that final page and read the last scene, they'll feel a sense of connection with both their own deepest longings and feel that there's a possibility of finding goodness in the world, especially at the moment when things feel like it can be an uncaring and cruel world. I hope people can regain a sense of hope and trust.
What's next for Julie Snider?
I'm working on another novel set in Chapel Bay with a completely different theme. And so working on making that a better book at the moment. I will, of course, continue writing on my Substack, so I hope people can check that out. I have a lot of fun with that. I write about things that go beyond social issues. I write about nature. I write about trips that I take and try to bring the readers along with me. So there are a lot of things, but I just want to keep learning.
The book is Chapel Bay Secrets. Its author is our special guest, Julie Snider. You need to check out her Substack. The links to everything important about her can be found at Julie, S-N-I-D-R, author, JulieSniderAuthor.com. This has been great, Julie. Thanks so much for the conversation.
Terry, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for inviting me.
In Conversation with Terry Shepard is a copyrighted presentation. All rights reserved. I'm Lisa Davis. Join Terry Shepard next time in Conversation.